So live on Facebook. Hello, Positive Lifers. Good to see you today. It's 12 noon and I'm here with a chap called Jonti Searll, who works in the whole field of conscious sexuality. We're going to chat today because Jonti's coming to Ireland, actually coming to the Wicklow Holistic Centre. He'll be here in May, isn't it, Jonti? That's when you're coming?
Yes, on the 6th of May.
On the 6th of May, but we'll post all the dates in the comments below so you can see exactly what's going on at the end of the chat there, yeah? Jonti, you've been doing this for about 20 years, so you've got a wealth of experience. So I love talking to people like you because you can really help us with some of these topics because you've got right in at the coalface, if you like, and seen so much stuff and worked with so many couples. So I'm sure you're familiar with all the classic problems. So the first thing I want to talk about, because a lot of our audience with the Positive Life magazine are big into the whole holistic, spiritual kind of thing. So are we really seeing a kind of a harmonizing and a coming together now of sex and spirituality? Is that energy really one and the same?
Yeah, they are, Paul. It's a great question. And thank you for the opportunity to share with everybody. When we see everything as separate, then we're disconnecting ourselves and we're disconnecting parts of us. So when we see our sexuality as separate from everything else, it's in this little box that we take out in very specific circumstances and contexts and we use, and then we put it away again. And then we have our spirituality. So we might be meditating in the morning and it's very separate to life. And one of the principles of this journey is that everything is an expression of our hearts. Everything is an expression of our spirit. So our bodies are divine. If our bodies are divine, then our sexuality is divine. And therefore, our sexuality is an expression of that divine. So it's not separate in any way.
And just to ask you, in terms of healing, healing a person, do you feel that you can heal through your sexual energy? Do you feel like if people have traumas or they've suffered in their childhood and stuff like that, that the sexual energy might be a gateway into healing that for them?
Absolutely. So a brief digression. So the traditional tantric perspective on healing is that nobody really needs to be healed. Nobody really needs to be fixed. What's happened over time is that we've disconnected and been disconnected from the essence of who we are, from our true nature. The stressful things that have happened to us, the traumatic things that have happened to us, the abuses that we've been that have been visited upon us. Quite a biblical phrase. I don't know where that came from, but there you go. So our sexuality, firstly, is such a powerful force because it's our vitality, it's our life force. And in that, it has amazing healing power. And so much of our self-definition, so much of our personal power is in our sexuality. And that's often the root of who we are. It's our creative energy as well in so many ways. So when we can access more of this energy, it can really help heal and release an enormous amount of what we've experienced and suffered and struggled with over the years. So it's a huge force for so much in our lives.
Beautiful, yeah. There's a question as well that came in from a friend of mine. I asked her to send in a question, and or did she have any questions because she's familiar with your work? And she mentioned that if you have an intimate relationship with two people, and one of them has suffered quite significantly in their childhood with some kind of abuse or something like that, what's the best way for them to approach the whole area of trusting, again, for this person to be healed within the relationship? What can the other partner do? What can they do to bring more trust and intimacy into the relationship?
Yeah. So firstly, it's a really good question, but firstly, to understand that your partner is not necessarily the person to heal you, and they may not have the skills to do that. And when a relationship becomes about healing, it creates an incredible imbalance in the relationship. And it often puts us in roles that take us away from being each other's lovers. And that's quite important. So to get something professional in terms of that is really, really important. And then understanding that the real power of connection is actually in intimacy, not in the sex. So how do we create moments of intimacy with each other? And that's where the trust comes from, not from the sex, but from intimacy. So that's the stuff of the heart. That requires incredibly open and honest communication. So learning to communicate is really important. And to be able to express our needs in that. What is it that we need? What is it that we want in any situation? And then the practices of intimacy. So for example, one of the most powerful that we teach is one called eye gazing, where you're sitting opposite your partner and you're looking into each other's eyes. But you're doing that with an awareness. It's not that I'm bored. It's not that I'm doing this because I think it might lead to us having sex. But can I really allow myself to be seen? You know, there's that saying, the eyes are the windows of the soul. And if we really look into each other's eyes, we'll see each other and we'll really be seen in that. And that's where we create the intimacy. So the intimacy is where we can soften into trusting each other, into connecting with each other. Learning to touch and to caress in a very gentle way that's not about genitals, that's not about sex, that doesn't have a goal. Practices like that become really important.
Now, that's one of my favorite practices, because when I used to do events in Dublin, I still do them. But we did a lot of Tantra events with people like Baba Dez and Don Cartwright, people like that. And the place was packed because you've got Irish people who we have definitely a conservative, repressed country coming from the Catholic background. People were like, there's gonna a sex night on in town, I'm going in, you know. So they all arrive in and they're told to gaze into each other's eyes, stroke each other's hands. There was no sex, it was just intimacy. But it began with a kind of a confusion, and then the hush that descended over the room, and the atmosphere of connection was just palpable, you know. So that's one of my favorite ones, the eye gazing. Initially, it's very, very scary, but it really builds with your partner this beautiful foundation of intimacy, as you said, you know. So I love that. Thank you for reminding me of that one. And yeah, go ahead.
There's a big difference between having sex and making love. And essentially, the sex part is often the easy part, because that's very physical. It's genital. It's, you know, tab A plugging into slot B kind of thing. And it's like quite a simple sort of mechanical thing from a lot of points of view. And for most people, sex is a very goal-oriented experience. So the goal is to have an orgasm, hopefully for both people. And that takes us out of the energy, out of the connection, out of the intimacy. And the intimacy on the connection is where the fulfillment is. The orgasm is kind of nice. It's wonderful. It's whatever it might be. But then it's done. And then what? So, you know, I really love food. It's a big part of my life. And there's a very big difference between kind of soul food that really touches something inside of you and something that just fills your stomach.
There's a lovely practice as well where you awaken the senses. You know that one as well, I'm sure. Yeah, that's a beautiful one. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that? That's a beautiful one.
So our sensuality is actually a path of awareness. And we've connected sensuality to sex, and we've said sensuality is the foreplay of sex. And there's this sort of myth that women like sensuality more than men, so men kind of put up with it because of what it's going to get them. But our sensuality is the most amazing path of awareness. So, you know, one of the things that I teach, I'm a really big coffee person. So in the morning with coffee, that first sip of coffee, so hold the coffee cup in your hand and really feel the warmth of the coffee and really breathe the smell of the coffee in. And the first sip of the coffee, really be so present with that and hold that in your mouth. Just one sip. And then you drink the coffee. And the first bite of a meal, to really enjoy the taste, the texture, the smell of the food. And then you eat it. And when you open the door in the morning, feeling the air on your face, whether it's hot or cold, it's rainy, it's snowy, it doesn't matter what it is, and just really feel that. So if we think about all of our senses, we can use them in the most amazing ways to become more aware. And when we do that, we actually become more aware during sex. So it really enhances the sensations that we feel. And when we do that, then we become more sensually aware in life. So it becomes this beautiful expansion of our sensuality in sex and in life.
this present moment awareness, you know, that you bring into everything, and then there's a
That's
richness,
it.
there's a richness that occurs. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
want to switch, John, to just to people in a very long-term relationship. Right. And I heard a beautiful guy this morning on Irish radio actually speaking about. He was speaking a poem, and he said that he wanted to love madly, and that up until now, all his relationships were timed kisses, timed little rubs. You know, everything was kind of coordinated just to do the minimum within the relationship. How do we keep spontaneity and intimacy in a long-term relationship? How do we do that?
So we do that firstly by keeping it alive and creating more of it within ourselves, because it is about us much more than we often think. So if we wait for somebody to kind of trigger that within us, we might wait a long time. Because if you think about the lives that we live, when they're busy lives, we don't always have a lot of time for play, for sex, for fun with that. So it becomes quite a chore, and it becomes quite patterned in a way. You know, it's a quickie at 10 o'clock at night, and then we fall asleep, and maybe on Sunday morning we have some more time. But when we live lives that are more spontaneous, and that's about connecting with the fire inside of us, what turns us on, not only sexually, but in life, what excites us. And the more we're in touch with that, the more we can bring that into our sexuality. And I've actually been writing a piece about this morning, because it's about saying, in our sexuality, can we bring the presence of the body rather than the presence of the mind? So the mind is the judgment. The mind is the way that we think sex should be, because that's what we've done and that's what we know. But can we do something different? And can that come from the body? So instead of just touching your partner where you're used to touching them, can you maybe bite a little bit? It doesn't have to be hard, but can I kiss your hand and can I bite somewhere? And there's this like, wow, of a sensation in my hand. And maybe instead of just stroking your back really gently, can I put a little bit of fire into that stroke? And can I be willing to share one of my fantasies with you and reveal more of who I am?
There's one I love. It's I'm an actor. You know, I've done a bit of acting in my time. And they used to do this one to develop trust in a group of actors in a play, where somebody would lean right back into me and I would hold them, and they have to let go and fall into me. You know, and I think that's just a beautiful exercise. You know, to just hold somebody. Because I remember a psychiatrist I interviewed once, and he said that everybody thinks people are looking for love, sex, all these things in relationship. And he interviewed thousands of couples, and he came across the most important thing for each partner, men and women, but primarily women, was the feeling of safety. That's it. With a partner. Would you agree on that?
Absolutely, because when we have the safety, we'll reveal ourselves. Until then, we won't. And this is one of the reasons that a lot of people don't express their desires, because there's an enormous fear of rejection of that. When I really am showing myself to you, I'm opening myself to rejection, to ridicule. But when that safety is there, I will share everything with you. And this is an interesting thing for men to understand, because the safer a woman feels, and, you know, I don't want to get into kind of cliches here, but the safer a woman feels, the more she will reveal the incredible fullness and power, the beauty of her sexuality and sensuality, of her emotions, of her life force. And this is one of the things that as men, the more that we can learn to hold that space for a woman, the more we're opening this door of the most amazing possibility of adventure and mystery and magic.
This is an interesting one, because this triggers something in me that I want to ask you. So we're now in a place where the masculine and the feminine is definitely on a rebalancing, okay? And the feminine seems to be coming in very, very strong. And it's about time, really. You know, it's a beautiful thing to witness. But as a man, so here it is, right? So when you said cliche there, so when I enter into a relationship, if I feel that I need to meet all these, the safety needs of the woman, I feel like I might be disempowering the woman, because, you know, if my ideal situation is where I have the masculine and feminine balance in me, She has a balance in her. I meet my own needs. She meets her own needs. Let's go celebrate from there. So how do we avoid the cliches and still offer the woman safety in a more conscious way is what I'm asking, I suppose.
Yeah, and you've actually given the answer by saying it is about the balance inside of you. And the more clear that you are within yourself and the more you're aware of both of those energies and the way that they express in the world, the more naturally there is a space of safety for us to meet. And when that's there, we can be met and we can meet our partners. So it's not about creating that for each other. It's about creating it together and understanding what the safety means for us, what we need in that. And that's very much the journey of me as a man and understanding all of the, as you said, the balance between the masculine and the feminine within me, the same thing in my partner. And from that, we can meet each other, because it's not up to any of us to create that for our partner. It simply is, we're opening the door to exploration in each other and with each other.
Okay, that's a deeper understanding of it. And because I used to think about it, and I would say to myself, in a relationship, it's kind of more like when I'm the big masculine man and I'm kind of looking after things and she's kind of a bit soft, that we're actually doing a bit of role play, and that makes it more fun than getting into that kind of codependent thing where, you know what I mean? So it becomes a role play rather than, like, I already have it balanced in myself. She has it balanced in herself. But we're going to role play this for fun and to feel that kind of playful energy in each other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and then it's so important to understand that. And Paul, you've hit something so important there, because we take all of this stuff so seriously. And what we've been talking about is serious. There's no question of it. But we forget that sex and sensuality are one of the ways that we as adults play. And we forget that. We forget about the fun. We forget about the role play. We forget about costumes and outfits and just having fun with it. And it's not so serious, because the more serious we take it, the more we kind of make it serious, instead of, there is so much fun in our play, in our bodies, and we tend to lose that. You know, can we just explore? Can we make noises during sex? And that's a huge thing, because so many of us have sex so quietly, especially men. Even in porn, you know, you hear women making all these amazing noises and they're moaning and groaning and screaming. And what do you hear from a man? Silence. So as a man, can you really, even if it feels ridiculous, and at first it will, can you really growl? And can you really, that energy that's there? Because when you do that, wow, will that open your partner?
That's brilliant. Before we get into what you're doing in Wicklow Holistic Centre and how long you're going to be here and that kind of thing, I just want to talk a little bit about the masculine in terms of how it's going to find its place right now. And I did mention before we came on the call that you speak about men actually becoming intimate with each other as well, because a lot of us have got kind of, particularly in, you know, in my generation, tricky relationships with our dads, you know, in terms of intimacy. Like, to get a hug from your dad is like, that's a serious production, you know. So we haven't had a lot of male affection. So, and men are a little bit afraid of that, you know, heterosexual men having affection for each other. You talk a little bit about that and how that can be brought into a healthier masculine.
Yeah, and I think there's quite a similarity between South Africa and Ireland in some of these things, you know, both being very, very conservative countries, coming from times of deep repression in so many ways. So I think there's quite a lot of parallels in that. And we've lost touch of the support of man to man. And we've lost touch of the affection that we can have with another man, which is so different to a woman. I facilitated an event this week, and it was a very imbalanced group in terms of men and women. So I was partnering up with a man. I think it was the first time he had ever touched another man's body. But the strength of a man's arms around you as a man is an amazing thing, because it's such a different feeling to that of a woman. And it's such a big step for us as men to drop the story and the meaning. And this is the big thing, because there's such a story with it. And for most men, the story is, if I like this, then I'm gay. Instead of, no, it's just something that's supportive. And if a man is holding you or a man is massaging your back and it feels good, that's all that it is. There's no story. There's no label. So if we can start to drop that, it starts to become quite different. And then looking at how, there is a growing men's movement in the world. It's very new. And, women have had the feminist movement, the goddess movement, that's been there for years. And whatever they did right or wrong is not the point. The point is it's been a platform for women to come together to explore. And that is growing for men. So every time a man comes to a workshop or comes to do some private work, it's such a celebration. And I really invite the men to come share with me while I'm there. It's a journey, and we're dealing with generations of disconnect in this journey, because it's our fathers and it's our grandfathers and our great-grandfathers, and it's all expressed in us. But when we do that, the healing power, not only within ourselves, but in our world, is enormous, because so much of our world is because so many men are stuck in this sort of martial role model of an absolute excess of power rather than a balance and a flow.
It's kind of what's playing out on the planet right now that we can
absolutely
see.
And the more of that balance within us, and the more that feminine can be there, the more we're kind of dancing with both of those energies. And then on a bigger planetary picture, we start to understand how important our sexuality can be in helping heal this. It's not just about having sex. It's not one genital with another. Because when something in my heart can shift and open, it's going to open to all of life. And that's going to allow me to have different relationships with men, with women, with government, with money, with work, with everything.
And, gender is really up for grabs now as well, isn't it? That's kind of coming into play in a big way across the world. What's your view on that, how that's playing out at the moment?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And people are claiming so many different aspects of themselves. The same with relationship. There are something like over 200 models of relationship in the world. And we get stuck on 2 or 3 very narrow ones. There's monogamy, there's some sort of polyamory, there's some swinging, and that's it. Instead of, there are so many ways to do this, so many ways we can be in the world. And the one thing about exploring our sexuality is it's an energy of creativity. So it's not only about being more sexually creative, but how can we be more creative in every aspect of life? How can we work differently? The last 2 years has really turned a lot of work stuff upside down, with people having to find different ways of working. So let's expand that, different ways of living, different ways of loving. And so much of this journey is about connection, not separation. That's what's so important, because so much of our world is separation. What makes you different to me? And in the touch of our hands, of an embrace, we're looking at the connection, not the separation.
The spontaneity, I got a vision there of somebody painting, and also the mood of a human being changes. You can change from hour to hour. Why not give each other that freedom? People say to each other, "Oh, you've really changed." Yeah, I have. Isn't that brilliant? I watched a movie last night, and in the movie, the 2 people came in, and it's like a rom-com, but it was a kind of Norwegian arty one. So they walk in, but they did exactly the same thing they did in the American movies. They just start tearing each other's clothes off. I was watching the movie with a friend of mine. I said, "Could you not just slow it down?" Imagine saying to somebody on a one-night stand, or you've just met, okay, we're in the hall, we're hot for each other, but let's just do a bit of eye gazing. I think it would blow their mind,
Absolutely. It changes so much. And what you said there, Paul, it's so important because we are different every day. And if we're having sex in the same way all the time, we're not allowing that spontaneous expression, because sometimes it is that really slow and gentle that I really want to look into your eyes forever, and I want to see the world there, and I want to disappear with you and melt with you. And there are times where this fire is there. And there are times where there's this little boy who maybe wants to have a pillow fight, or who knows what we want to do. And then we just start to become so much more human in every way. And we stop taking ourselves, we stop taking life so seriously. And it is, and I'm not making light of anything. But when we bring more of that energy into ourselves, we can be different in the world. We can be different with our lovers. And we're showing our kids, even if it's not our personal kids, we're showing the possibility of such humanness that can really come out of being more fully sexual.
I'm enjoying this conversation so much. It's beautiful. And I think it's really going to help a lot of people who are listening in, and I hope they're enjoying it. Before we go into Wicklow, there's one more thing I want to ask you, and that is, give me a sense, if you will, of two beings, gender is irrelevant, coming together and being both in their full power, and how you feel, if with all your experience, a relationship like that, what it looks like. Give us a sense of that.
It's an expression of the divine in every moment, that every single thing in that is sacred. So every single thing in that is an expression of the divine. And the divine expresses itself in so many ways in life that you and I are simply different expressions of that energy in the world, and we bring different elements of ourselves in that every day. So it's really about oneness.
Okay, beautifully said. Jonti is here, folks, in Wicklow from May the 6th. Jonti, tell us exactly, you're working with men and women, and just give us a flavor of what kind of work you're going to be doing when you're here.
Yes, so doing a whole range of workshops that go from things like expanded energy orgasm, which is how you can be in an orgasmic state for over an hour, as opposed to having like a 20, 30-second orgasm, to really beautiful sensual touch and massage, to exploring intimacy, so many different things. There's 3.5 weeks of workshops that are for men, for women, for couples, for everybody. And every one of them has so much in terms of they're a forum for us to explore, to ask questions, to find out that we're normal, to find out that we can enjoy so many different things, to dispel so many myths. So sex is generally the part of life that has the most myth, misunderstanding, and information. And we're going to talk about what's real, our bodies, what's the anatomy of our bodies. Like, what is your G-spot? This big mystery. Do you actually have one? Even if you spend hours looking for this little sucker and you can't find it, how do you find it? What is it? What do you do with it when you find it? And what comes after the G-spot? Because there's a whole lot more. And how we can talk to each other, how we can communicate. So in one way, it's really kind of a place of truth, and of finding our truth in that space.
So the G-spot is coming to Wicklow by the sounds of things.
Absolutely.
So get down there.
I like that. I got to have a t-shirt printed with that, Paul.
You're reminding me of, I remember being in Thailand and I met a Taoist master, and I was with a load of Western, normal enough American fellas, normal approach to sexuality. And the guy came over and he said, he was very Zen-like, but he was funny. And he just said, what do you guys do? You going around ejaculating all the time? We were like, what? It's quite a question to ask us. And he said, you don't need to ejaculate all the time. You only need to ejaculate to procreate, When you're with your woman, you need to go into your heart and then you prolong the male orgasm. He said I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm having full body orgasms most of the time. And he really caught our attention. And I believe this guy. And it was with Mantak Chia. Do you remember, you know who Mantak Chia is?
Absolutely.
It was in his school and the teachings they have. So you reminded me of that there. Sorry, you want to say something on that?
Yeah, one of the things that we're going to talk about and teach on one of the retreats is something called a Taoist sexual energy massage. So it comes from that tradition, working with the energy channels, the meridians in the body. And it's an extremely beautiful and powerful technique, not only of healing, but also of pleasure. And I think that's quite a big thing. We're kind of, not kind of, a lot of what we're doing is the space where healing and pleasure come together to create oneness, to create awareness, and to allow us to express that awareness in every moment.
Yeah. Thanks, Jonti, for this conversation. It's been absolutely brilliant. I really recommend this course. I'm going to go down and do one of them myself. So if anybody fancies it, I'll put below in the comments exactly what's on. It's the Wicklow Holistic Centre. It's in Wicklow Town. Elaine Woods Clark is the host. Fair play to Elaine for bringing someone like Jonti over to teach this brilliant work. And tune in again, folks. And we'll be on again next week with somebody else. But for now, if you want to say goodbye, Jonti, to people, we'll see you soon in Ireland.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm so looking forward to being with everybody. It's a month today. I'll be there.
Brilliant. Thanks again, folks. See you soon.